Okay, good evening. My name is Amy Ritterbusch, and I'm a board member of Ehop. And for our special town meeting coming up, we did not have time to do a full Know Your Vote show, so we decided to do individual videos about each of the articles on the warrant this year. So tonight I'm here with Jeff Farland and Nicole Simpson to discuss Article number 3, the Specialized Stretch Energy Code. And so I'm going to ask some frequently asked questions that the Ehop board members have that we think the members of the public will probably have as well. Okay. All right. So first, so there are a variety of building code options for towns now. So which one does Hopkinton currently have, and when did we adopt it? Do we know?
So yes, there's 3 levels of the building code in Massachusetts. There's a base code, which is minimal standards, and about 8% of the state population is under it. The stretch code, which Hopkinton has now, was adopted by the town in 2010. We were one of the earliest adopters of the stretch code when it became available. It really increased the efficiency standards of buildings. The specialized code, which is an amendment to the stretch code, which we're aiming to adopt at special town meeting, became available earlier this year. Just in its first year, it's reached, I believe, 22% as of tonight of the state population is already under the new code. It's being adopted really quickly. So everyone's essentially upgrading from the stretch code to the specialized code.
Okay. So even if we do adopt it, we wouldn't be the earliest adopters like we were in the past.
That's true.
Okay. So what is the anticipated cost of building under the stretch energy code? So the differences from building under the specialized versus the regular stretch code that we already have?
Yeah, so for building under the specialized code, maybe I could start by describing a little bit of what's different about it.
Yep.
So under the specialized code, you have multiple paths for either residential, multifamily homes, or commercial. And the biggest thing that it changes is pre-wiring. And what that means is for if you are using what they call mixed fuel, so any natural gas or oil or propane into your home to run appliances, you would also need to have wiring in place that down the road you could switch. Let's say you're replacing your gas stove, you would have the option to switch to an induction or electric powered electric powered stove without bringing in an electrician. Mm-hmm. So pre-wiring for all of your appliances, your home heating, your water heating, cooking, and clothing drying. But the easiest way to comply with that is to build all electric from the beginning. And if you do go that path with building an all-electric home, you'll find it's, in many cases, cost neutral or possibly even less because there's so many rebates available now from the federal and Inflation Reduction Act that passed last year. There's rebates, and from the state as well. So it may cost less to build if you go that all-electric path. There's other things involved with the specialized code. One of them is solar requirements. If you go the all-electric path, you are not required to install solar on the home, but if you go mixed fuel, then you may need some amount of solar on site. And for larger homes over 4,000 square feet, you would need enough solar to offset the annual energy usage of the home.
Also on cost, we want to be clear that adoption of the specialized code will not impact the cost of the Elmwood School replacement.
Yeah, that is a question I had too.
That project was already designed in compliance with the specialized code.
Okay, that's great.
Being an all-electric building.
Okay. And then how about, how does the stretch code apply to historic buildings that already exist?
So historic buildings have exemptions to certain building codes. And the specialized code only applies to brand new construction. Anything else we have is under the stretch code and isn't changed.
Okay.
So if you're renovating your current home, you're still under the stretch code.
Okay. And then how about, so existing buildings, alterations, additions, and changes of use. So you're saying that those are all still be under the current stretch code that we have, not
Correct.
under the new specialized stretch code. Okay. And then, let's see. And you already talked about the gas stove, and I was going to say for myself, I've always loved my gas stove, and we've had it for a very long time, but we just recently, it got old and needed to be replaced. And we did switch to the induction oven, and I really didn't think I was going to like it, but it's been great. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that we did have to have an electrician come in to install the So it really added to the cost to have the electrician to come in to install the appropriate outlet needed for the gas, for the electric stove.
Right. So by having the specialized code, you're really watching out for the future residents of either home or renters in an apartment. By having that pre-wiring, you have that flexibility to make that switch to electric without the added cost.
Yeah, because a lot of people do like cooking with gas, I think, so that might be hard. And then what about, like Hopkinton and lots of places are very woodsy. How would people meet the solar requirements if they are in the wooded area they can't meet? Would they have to cut down a lot of trees in order to be solar ready? Or?
Yeah, so there's guidance around the requirements for solar. So it looks at what direction the roofs are facing, what angle, how much light they would get annually. And so if there are shaded sites, there may be some exceptions there are exceptions where you wouldn't be required to put in solar. The one thing that's a little bit different is, again, those homes over 4,000 square feet, there is not that exception for shading. You're expected on site to generate enough energy to have enough solar to offset all of the energy usage for the year. And that's basically laying out plan appropriately. Again, this is all about new construction. So as you're designing it, design to be able to accommodate that. If you're going the mixed fuel path, if you're going all electric, you don't have those requirements.
Even if it's 4,000 square feet?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then, and how about, so commercial buildings will be covered under the specialized code as well, not just residential. Is that right? And I had the question about the Elmwood School replacement, and you said that already qualifies. And so what about renovations to either the old center school or the old Elmwood School? Because we don't know what might happen there, if things would be torn down and rebuilt, or if they might renovate the buildings that are there.
Sure. There's a lot of interesting sustainability questions that I've heard around those two buildings.
Yeah.
But regarding the building code, they would be under the stretch code. They're not affected by the specialized code.
Okay. Even if, like, for example, the old Elmwood School, if it were to be completely torn down, then I probably would.
If you're completely tearing down a building and
Okay.
building a new one, that is new construction, as
Okay.
far as I understand.
And we don't know, to the public, we don't really know what's going to happen with those buildings quite yet. It's not been decided. There'll be public input, but
there are other committees looking at that
yeah,
challenge.
the Permanent Building Committee has an event coming up about that. And then how do builders and realtors and maybe the Chamber of Commerce, do we know how they feel about this change to the specialized code? Or if they generally, because other towns have already done it, so do we know if it's affecting them?
So we've talked to the building inspectors and gotten their initial feedback. Overall, it's positive. They understand the green goals of the town, and the impact to them is a little bit more training, which is free from the state. Regarding the Chamber of Commerce, we've done some outreach. We haven't had a lot of back and forth yet, but we've still got 2 weeks till town meeting.
Yep.
And as far as training for the inspectors, this would take effect July 1st of 2024. So there still is several months to be able to get familiar with the new requirements of the specialized code.
Okay. And so, because some developers might have a project that's already under consideration for the planning board, so this won't affect them if they can get through their process before July 2024, which is still quite a ways
Correct.
away. Okay.
Yes.
So they won't have to change anything. Okay, and then let me just see if I had any other questions that I forgot to go through here. But I think you've answered most things. Is there anything else that you think I've forgotten to cover that people will be probably be curious about and be likely to ask at town meeting?
I guess to expand on the question about developers, some of the other municipalities that have adopted this already include towns like Sherborne, Concord, Acton, Maynard, Stowe, Carlisle, Lincoln. So a lot of towns that don't look that different from us. So as far as developers, this may be something they have to become familiar with because so many towns are going this direction, and it's really building for the future needs.
Okay.
Would you want to speak to the sustainability side of it, of why we're doing
Yeah,
this?
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah.
In the intro, I didn't cover like the overall goals of this.
Yeah.
So the specialized code was designed specifically to meet the state's net zero goals. And so in Hopkinton, we also have a net zero goal of 2045. The vast majority of home energy emissions, 80% of them come from HVAC, heating and cooling air, and the heating of water. And I think in town, roughly 50% of our emissions come from buildings in general. So getting the greenest building code possible really has an impact on how we can achieve net zero. We can't achieve net zero, let's be clear, without tackling the problem of how we're heating and cooling our buildings.
Yeah. Okay, and we did vote on that at last year's town meeting, I believe.
That was at May 2023.
2023, yeah, so that's great. Okay, and then I think I'm just looking through your slides for town meeting, and I don't know that we've missed anything. Is there anything we've not covered?
Maybe I can just touch on home heating and heat pumps. I don't know if that's something everyone's familiar with, but just in talking about this, I hear people say, well, isn't heating with electric really expensive?
And that's what we've always heard, like, for years.
Sure, yeah. And that's thinking back to when it was the older technology for heating, resistive heating, that was very expensive and not very comfortable. Heat pumps are a different technology. So with a heat pump, it actually heats and cools from the same system. So you don't need both a furnace and an air conditioning. You have both in one system. And it's extremely efficient. So when you think of a gas furnace, many of them now are 97% efficient, which sounds great, is highly efficient for that kind of appliance. Heat pumps, if you're kind of comparing it on the same scale, the amount of energy it uses would be 300% efficient. And that's because it's moving heat versus creating heat. So by using a heat pump, you have a much more efficient way of heating your home. And there's different types. We're going to hear a lot about ground source heating because that's what the school is doing, and the way that they're going to have a very efficient and cost-effective system. Upfront cost of installing it, but lower operation costs. For a home, you could do ground source, and if you're going to do it, when you're building it is the best time to do that. But you could also go with an air source option, which is more typical in a home. So those are two different ways of doing a heat pump. So I know people might get nervous hearing about moving to all electric. That sounds expensive. Well, not with current technology. Heat pumps can work very well in cold climates and would be, I just switched to that recently. It's a really good option for heating and cooling your home. And then,
I was going to say, that's good to know, because we had been, for many years we've been told that heat pumps really didn't work well in the Northeast, that we have some relatives in the Mid-Atlantic, like Delaware area, and they always said, oh, no, in the winter, sometimes we can't get enough heat and we have to turn on the electric, or they have to do something different, their heat pump won't work.
And that was true just a few years ago, and it's really just in the past few years that the technology has advanced, that they, I think many are rated down to -30, and we really don't hit that around here. I don't know if it's quite that far, but to very cold temperatures that we're not typically reaching. And so you would want to get one that is rated for cold climates, and with everything else in the stretch code about home insulation, having that a really well insulated home and windows that comes along with building according to the latest version of the stretch code, your heat pump's going to be very effective.
In fact, I've heard that roughly 60% of Norway is heated by heat pumps, so the technology is certainly there.
Yeah, and Maine has been exceeding all of their goals in installing heat pumps. So that's a great way to get energy efficiency and be switching to all electric.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Like, I have a really old house, so this wouldn't apply to me, but I don't know quite how I could even take advantage of the heat pump technology, really. Like, we have hot water radiators throughout our house.
Sure,
with
and
a gas boiler. So
you would use a heat pump that heats the water.
So heat pump for an electric boiler, then, I guess we'd have.
Right, exactly. So every house is unique. So that's why it's going to be such a challenge with existing buildings. But if we can build new construction to a better standard and prepare them for that from the start, we won't have to retrofit as many homes to achieve net zero.
Now, how about, like, I live in the downtown area, and when there's new construction downtown, the lots are small, and people try to build up, it's very close to the lot line as they possibly can. So does a heat pump take up a lot of yard space, so they'd have to reserve space in the yard for?
So it's
or that just goes
as
straight
big,
down?
just as big as an outdoor air conditioner is.
Okay.
Yeah, one of those, maybe 3 foot by 3 foot units.
Okay.
And that's for an air source heat pump. If you were trying to do ground source, that would be more challenging in that environment.
Because you need a larger area.
Yeah, and there would be digging wells in the ground, and so that may not be as practical for that area. And that's why you see that more for large buildings. So if a large business was building new here, that would probably be the direction they were thinking. Most homes, you're probably going to be you'll be looking at an air source heat pump.
Okay, so I don't think I have any additional questions. I think we'll just have to tell all the voters and the watchers at home that special town meeting is coming up on Monday, November 13th at 7 p.m. at the Hopkinton Middle School. And they're going to experiment with the electronic voting where you don't have to use your own phone. You'll get a clicker when you check in, and it would just be a simple yes/no button that you press at town meeting. And if for some reason we don't like it, it doesn't work well, we can always go back to the standing count like we always do at town meeting. So
I've heard there will be practice votes with the clickers.
yes, I think that I hope they will do practice votes. Yeah. So, but I think it's good to try. People have been asking for this for a long time to have to try an electronic voting method. So we'll see. Hopefully, it's successful.
Thank you so much for having us, Amy.
Yeah. Thank you to Sustainable Green Committee, and thank you to HCAM for having us.
Thank you, HCAM.